Okay, hello, welcome back. Today, talking about books, reading a book. I finished reading Mistborn, The Final Empire. Sometimes it's called The Final Empire, sometimes it's just called Mistborn, which is the name of the series by Brando the Mando Sanderson. Very, very popular author in fantasy currently, especially in booktube type spaces. I've been a fake fan of Brandon Sanderson for a good while now. I've listened to a whole bunch of his podcasts. I've seen some of his writing lectures, and I've watched a whole bunch of booktube related stuff. Daniel Green, some Murphy Napier, Man Carrying Thing. Some of those guys who have like interacted with Sanderson and done a good chunk of reviewing and talking about his books and stuff as well. So I've been really intrigued by his whole approach to being like very involved in the fan base and stuff. And I've been very intrigued by his type of world building. So this is the first time I've actually finally read a whole book of his, and I liked it. I think it was good. I'll talk more about it in a sec. But the thing that kind of hooked me and is maybe going to become a problem is that the way that he's structured the majority of his writings, I know some of the books are their own thing, but the majority of his books all fall within one large shared universe. And I don't know all the specific details of how all of that works exactly, but from my understanding, the basic structure is that like each major fantasy book or series takes place in their own world, their own planet, where they have their own, world building and magic and stuff that goes on there. But all of those planets exist within either the same solar system or the same galaxy or universe or whatever. And there are some stuff that can cross over. And from my understanding, some of the later books have more crossover stuff. And currently he's kind of playing more with crossing over stuff at a larger scale. Some of the book series, like I know Mistborn, the idea is that there's several different eras, or there's going to be. Currently there's 2 eras, and he's working on the 3rd era, and it's gonna like advance in technology on each one. So the first one is like classic medieval-ish fantasy, and then the 2nd era is more like steampunky from what I've heard, and then it gets like more modern, and eventually it'll get to like space travel is the idea. So I know a lot about like some of the larger world building, or I know some of that stuff, and I think that's all really cool and interesting, but I haven't read that many of the actual books. So I was like, maybe I should actually read some of this because it sounds kind of cool. It also feels very like comic booky, which I kind of am more familiar with a lot of that stuff, and that shit is crossing over all the time. So that makes my brain go like, ooh, that sounds fun. But of course, the other side of that is that jumping into like a Brandon Sanderson thing is like, well, now that you're in, now you have to read all 100 books that he's written, and he's famously written a lot of books, and a lot of very long books, and a lot of books very quickly. Whoa, my light is not behaving. So I don't know how much of that I'm going to end up getting to. I'm also not a super fast reader, so like the Stormlight Archive is one of his other big series, and those books are all like super duper long. I probably won't get to those. Sorry. Maybe one day, but like it just seems too long. Like this one is Mistborn is supposed to be one of the shorter books, and it's still like longer than Dune. At least from page count on my copy. And that could be varied. Anyways, I haven't even said anything about this book yet. So I liked it. It's the short version. Basically, the main gist of the story, without giving too much away, is that we're in this fantasy world. There are people known as Mistborns or Allomancers who can use different metals to get different superpowers, basically. And if some people can just use one or two different of the metals, but if you're a Mistborn, that means you can use all of them. And there's a bunch of different powers that you can get. The main cool one is the like Magneto type powers, where you can push or pull on different metals to move them towards or away from you. But the way that that's used really interestingly is that it like kind of takes physics into account and your own like strength as a limitation. So if you're pulling on something that is heavier than you, you'll start to pull yourself towards it. And then the reverse of that also works, where if you're pushing on something smaller than you, and then that thing like a coin, for example, if you push that towards the ground, then it hits the ground, there's nowhere else for the coin to move, so then you start moving upwards. And so just that alone is used in all kinds of really, really creative ways, and it's really cool. Sanderson gets a lot of mileage out of just that ability being very cool. So yeah, I like it. I think he's even mentioned like it's kind of a world of Magnetos or like metal benders, but it's very specific about how the rules work and how the world building and magic system works. But because it's very specific, it's the characters are like aware of how everything works, and they're able to push everything to its absolute limits, and we get some really creative, cool moments. Like there's one moment that I thought was super cool, where there's certain characters that have like obsidian weaponry, because obsidian is a rock, and so you can't metal bend that. I know it's not called metal bending, but that's what I'm going to call it, whatever, because it's kind of that. And so there's this one character that takes advantage of this by taking these arrows and then breaking the ends off and putting a ring onto the arrowhead, or onto the arrow. So it's an obsidian tipped arrow, so it's like you can't move the arrow, but you can move the ring. And so she's like pushing the ring towards these like enemies who are also able to move metal, and they try to move the arrow away from them and push back against it, but then they just push the ring, and the ring just slides off the arrow, and the arrow's already moving, so it just moves towards them and kills them. And I'm like, that's so cool. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. It's just like a really cool use of the magic and world building. The main plot is focused on this young girl named Vin, who learns that she is a Mistborn and can do the magic. And she ends up coming across this crew of like thieves. They're like they do like heists and stuff. They're all Mistborn or Mistings, which is the term for someone who can do like one or two of the different types of magic. Because there's a bunch of other magics that people can do with different metals by ingesting different metals. There's a whole, I learned after reading the entire book that there's like a thing at the back that explains what all the different metals do and what powers you get. So like there's one where you can like manipulate people's emotions, and there's one where you can make yourself stronger and stuff like that. And they all have different varying limitations and stuff like that. You also have to like eat certain metals, and then you like digest them or burn them and turn them into magic energy that you can use. But then that's limited based on how much you've ingested, and it only lasts for so long, so there's different limitations to what you can do. It sounds kind of complicated, but you pick it up as you go along, and it's explained in a way that's pretty easy to understand. Also, a good chunk of this book is Vin joining this new thieving crew, they're kind of doing magic related heists and stuff, but their main end goal is to overthrow the final empire, who is the big bad evil empire that is ruling over everyone. But Vin's main goal for at least the early on in the book is to just learn how to do this magic. And so she gets trained by the leader of this group named Kelsier, and he is like training her to do all these different magics. So we pick up stuff and start to learn how the world works as Vin does. And so you learn about the world pretty naturally through that. And Of course, as the story goes on, Vin initially is just like, I'm just in this to learn how to do cool magic shit. Good luck trying to overthrow the evil empire and the Lord Ruler, who is essentially a god. You're crazy and you're not going to be able to do that, but I'll stick around and learn cool magic shit. And then, of course, as the story goes on, she kind of becomes more invested in overthrowing the evil empire and even starts to kind of believe that that is even something that can be accomplished in the first place. The other main aspect of this book is that Vin's role in their main thieving group is to sort of become a spy for the like upper class elite in this world, and so it kind of becomes like a Bridgerton, like what's it called, like Regency era type thing for a little bit, which is interesting. So she has to like go to all these balls and present herself as this young lady that's looking for like a suitor and looking to make alliances with different noble houses and that kind of thing. Meanwhile, she's learning to become like a magic assassin at night. So there's like almost this secret identity layer to it. And I really, really dug all of that stuff way more than I thought I would, because it kind of becomes this like almost romance Regency era kind of thing, which is not my favorite genre. But I felt that because she had this like secret identity and she was like doing this for ulterior reasons, and like initially she fucking hates it because she's like a street kid and is like not into wearing dresses and stuff, and suddenly she's going to like these fancy balls and learning how to dance, and she's like, this sucks, I hate it. And so you're like, that element I think is fun to it, but she learns to like to put on a performance, and so there's this like duality angle to the character. I really liked all that stuff. And then she ends up meeting this one guy named Elland, who's like the edgy, I'm trying to think of a good comparison. Basically, he's like at one of these balls and he's just reading a book instead of participating, and she's like, why are you even here if you aren't involved in what's happening? And he's like, because these balls are lame and stupid and reading is better. And they have a really fun dynamic, and I really enjoyed all that stuff a lot, actually. And I didn't expect a lot of that to even be in there. Yeah, I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was a good book. I'm not explaining it well. Yeah, so basically, like Elland is the like guy at the party who's like, man, parties suck, huh? And I think that's fun. Yeah, and then he turns out to be a little bit more to him. There's a little bit more to him as we learn. He's more sympathetic to like the underground resistance that's starting to build. There's a whole theme about like knowledge being power in this story, and so he's like reading a lot of the books that have been like banned and that you're like not supposed to read because they're critical of the government and of the Lord Ruler and stuff. He's starting to question like the way the world works and the way that he's been raised to believe everything is supposed to work. He's a little more critical of like the separation in class structure and stuff like that. So there's like a little bit more to him, and Vin realizes that like he actually might be a powerful ally in their growing resistance. So it's good. It's good. There's cool stuff in it. I like it a lot. Like I was saying before, the book is kind of long and it took me a good while to finish it. I was also listening to the audiobook for a part of it, and then I'm just using the app Libby, so then my time ran out with the audiobook, and so I found a copy of the real book and finished it that way. But at the same time of like me feeling like the book was kind of long, and that's partly just because I'm kind of a slow reader, so it takes me a while to get through books that are longer than 200 pages. At the same time, I felt like I was just kind of barely scratching the surface with this world and stuff. There's a lot of characters that I wanted to learn more about and spend more time with, because I feel like I still didn't really know much about them by the end of the story. And at the end of the book, they kind of hint at there being a lot more to this world than what we first are aware of. And I'm sure there will be more, obviously, in the following books and so on. And I'm thinking I'll probably try to read the next book. I was also really interested in Tress of the Emerald Sea, which came out last year. That was part of last year or a couple years ago. Brandon Sanderson did this like Year of Sanderson Secret Projects thing, where he during COVID he wrote 4 extra books in secret that were just like on top of the writing for the main series that he was already doing. And those all came out last year, and you could order them through Kickstarter or whatever, and like nobody knew anything about them. They just released, which is kind of crazy. The first one was Tress of the Emerald Sea, and it's sort of like Princess Bride vibes is what I've heard, and that sounds really cool. I've heard it's really good, so that was one that I was really curious about, and it's a standalone, so I don't have to like read more. But I might finish out the first Mistborn trilogy, and then there's like a sequel series, which I think is 4 books, which is the second era, so it's like later on in the timeline with new characters and stuff. It feels very like Legend of Korra versus original Avatar. So I don't know, I might get to those as well. If you're a Brando Sanderson fan, let me know in the comments what else I should read. But yeah, Mistborn was one that I had heard was a good place to start. But I've also in the middle of many other fantasy series that I want to read more of, so we'll see. Oh yeah, the other character that I wanted to talk about is this dude named Sazed, who was my favorite character, and I forgot about him for some reason. But he was great. So he's called a keeper or something like that, and he has the ability to like store knowledge and memories of religions and cultures and stuff. So he is like keeping track of and chronicling all these like ancient religions that have been his like order that he's a part of is in charge of like chronicling all these old religions that have been forgotten and are no longer practiced. And so he has all these like knowledge of various gods that people used to believe in but no longer do and stuff. And I just found his whole philosophy like so interesting. He's part of their crew as well, and he's like throughout the story he keeps like pitching new religions to Vin. He's like, I think you might like this one, and like tells the history of like what they believed about certain gods and stuff, and like Vin keeps being like, but you can't like possibly believe in these different religions, like don't they constantly contradict each other? And he's like, I don't know, not really, like sure, but I don't really see a problem with that. He just had like a really interesting philosophy and stuff, and I found every conversation with him like super interesting. Great character. Wanted just more, always wanted more of him. He was great. But yeah, that was, I don't know, that's my thoughts on Mistborn. I think it was pretty good. That's mostly all that I wanted to talk about. But I just wanted to mention I am working on some other videos that I'm hoping will come out soon. Well, the main video I'm working on currently is an X-Men video. I'm talking about the X-Men movies. And that's basically done, but it's gonna come out closer to when Deadpool Wolverine comes out, so look forward to that. That's what I've been working on. I'm also now realizing that I want to get back into finishing the Teen Titans reviews that I was working on. I'm sort of realizing the problem that I caused myself by doing it in a different way this time. So the main reason I started doing the Titans videos was to give myself something to do every week. And I'm like, that's a simple enough idea to just review 1 episode per week. And it also like works well with the way my brain works and the way that I am productive or not productive is if I like start too big of a project, I usually don't get around to finishing it. So there's like some videos that I really wanted to do where I've started or I've done part of it or I've written part of it, but then it starts to become too big of a project, and then I just get distracted and do something else instead. So the Teen Titans videos, the idea was to solve that problem by just having one small thing to do every week. And then by the end of it, it would be like one large project that encompasses this whole series. But I kind of shot myself in the foot with the most recent ones that I was working on, because I'm like, I'll do all of season 4, and then I'll edit all of them, and then I'll put them all, and then I'll finish them, and then they'll all be out, and then I'll put them out week to week after completing all of them at once. But then that just becomes a big, larger project, and I fell right into all the problems of doing it, of that I was trying to avoid by doing this in the first place. So I've recorded almost all of them except for the last couple episodes, which I hadn't gotten to yet. And then I had started editing them, but then didn't finish editing them because it felt like too big of a job to do all of them. And so I got distracted and started working on other things instead. So I don't know. I would like to get back into it. I might have more time this month to work on it, but I'm not sure because I'm also working part-time. So we'll see how things go, but I would like to do more, and I feel bad that I kind of haven't gotten as far as I would like to on that project. And then there are other various things I would like to do at some point as well. I want to do more writing. I want to do more other things too. So I don't know. I'll maybe get to some of that at some point. If I ever figure out how to do side projects that interest me and also have a job that makes money and also have like some kind of social life as well, that would be awesome. I would love to have all those things figured out, but who knows. But that's it for now. Thank you for watching. What are you reading? What are you up to? Let me know in the comments. That's it for now. Bye-bye.